Notre Dame returns one of the best defenses in college football next season, one that is loaded with talent and experience. But there are still a few key position battles this offseason that could raise the ceiling and make this unit the best in the entire country. It's coming up next on Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome in to Locked On Irish. This is your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm Tyler Wojciak, a Notre Dame alum and Fox Sports producer, and thank you so much for making this your first watch or listen of the day on Thursday, February 5th. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And before we get rolling here, please just take a quick second, make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel or following on your preferred podcast platform. It's free and it allows you to stay up to date on our daily coverage of Notre Dame football all year long, and it helps more Irish fans find the show. I also wanted to remind you to submit any questions you have for the Friday mailbag if you want yours featured on tomorrow's show. As always, you can submit yours in the YouTube comments, or you can find us on X at Locked On Irish or on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod. All right, so yesterday we broke down the top position battles on offense for Notre Dame this offseason, and today we're going to flip things around to the defensive side of the ball. With so much returning talent and experience, there aren't quite as many wide open position battles on the defense, but there are still a few spots where a starter is going to have to emerge, and we're going to talk through all of them today. Then at the end, we're also going to talk about a position battle on special teams that could have a huge impact on the upcoming season as well. I understand you might scoff at it, but as we like to say on this show, special teams is a third of the game. And for as exciting it can be with the fake punts and the blocked kicks, Notre Dame has not been sound in the kicking game for over 2 years now, and they desperately need to get that right in 2026. But the most important, or maybe the most interesting defensive position battle to me is at nickel. Now that the base defense in college football and the NFL is a 4-2-5 with 5 defensive backs in the field and 3 cornerbacks, nickel is just, it's part of it now for Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has had a really good run at nickel in recent years. They've always dipped their toes in the transfer portal to get one. Last year, I think Devontae Smith was a really good player. He just could not stay healthy all year long. But then at the end of the season, when you saw him go out there and make plays all over the field, you realized, like, man, if Notre Dame had him in that Texas A&M game, that result is probably different. He was just that good. And then before him, they got Jordan Clark from Arizona State, who was not super, how should I say this? His commitment was not always well received, let's put it that way, but I think he exceeded everyone's expectations and was a big part of that defense that led them to the national title. And then the year before that, they got Thomas Harper from Oklahoma State, who wasn't a big name either, had a pretty long injury history, but was able to stay healthy most of the year with the Irish. He had a good season, ended up going undrafted, but then was a pretty impactful player on the Detroit Lions this season. So I think a lot of people, myself included, thought Notre Dame would go after another proven nickel in the transfer portal this offseason, and they got 2 cornerbacks, but neither one of them has had much experience playing nickel. They got DJ McKinney, the redshirt senior from Colorado, and then they got Jaden Sanders, the sophomore, or the will-be sophomore, I should say, from Michigan. So let's look at the contenders here to play nickel. You've got McKinney. Even though he's played over 2,000 snaps in his career, very few of those have been in the box at the slot position. But still, I think given his experience, that could be an option for Notre Dame to put him in the slot. And especially if they decide that like very early on in the offseason and he spends the next several months just training at that position, I think he could be ready to go at the start of the season. Or if they would prefer to keep DJ McKinney as the field corner, maybe they're open to moving Christian Gray to the inside. Last year, believe it or not, Christian Gray led the Notre Dame defense with 11 pass breakups. I think most people would assume it would be Leonard Moore. It was not. It was Christian Gray. Now, part of that has to do with teams targeting Gray a lot more because they weren't going to throw Leonard Moore's direction, but still, that's pretty impressive. Gray also had 2 interceptions last season. He made some of the biggest plays in 2024, including arguably the biggest play when he intercepted Drew Aller in the college football playoff semifinal game. But as we know, he has a tendency to get beat. And last year, he had the second worst coverage grade of anyone on the Notre Dame defense. He was only ahead of Carson Hobbs. This is according to Pro Football Focus, but I think it backs up what a lot of us saw on the field. Gray gave up 452 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had 9 penalties. That's a lot. That's way more than anyone else. Leonard Moore was right behind him at 4. So he had 5 more than anyone else on the defense, and a lot of those were deserved. Maybe some of them you could argue, but against USC, they were just targeting Gray over and over and over again. And if he didn't give up a pass, he was probably committing a pass interference penalty on the play. So I think it's a fair question to ask, would Gray be better suited playing in the slot where he's less likely to get beat by an outside wide receiver? But if you're in the slot, you got to guard tight ends. You have to be able to keep up with slot receivers, and you have to contribute in the run game. Gray is not a bad tackler. He only had 3 missed tackles on the year last season, but it's a little bit different when you're in the box and you're getting running backs right there, and it's not like a wide receiver in the open field or anything like that. So I believe this has been picking up some steam. Notre Dame is willing to try Gray out there. Some people are projecting that is what's going to happen. Christian Gray is going to be the starter at nickel. I'm not ready to go there just yet because Notre Dame also has Dallas Golden, who was going to be a sophomore next season. He had to play nickel once Devontae Smith went down, and they basically just gave up on Carson Hobbs after that game against Texas A&M. And Dallas Golden had an up and down year. Teams completed over 70% of their passes when they threw his way for over 250 yards and 3 touchdowns. Golden did get an interception. He had a couple pass breakups, but context is important here. Dallas Golden was an early last year, and he did not take 1 snap in practice at nickel during spring practice, during the summer, or during training camp. But once it became clear that Carson Hobbs was not going to be a contributor for this defense, they decided to move Dallas Golden to nickel, and he started a few games there while Devontae Smith was out. And I thought overall, he showed flashes of why he was such a highly touted recruit, but when you're a freshman being thrust into that position where you're essentially playing out of position and you're playing some good teams on the fly, some good passing offenses, yeah, you're going to get beat a few times. I think the question for Dallas Golden going into next year is, does the staff even want him there? They were basically forced to put him there last year. This year, they're going to have the option to do that because there are just so many talented corners in that room. Then there's Jane Sanders, the transfer from Michigan. He's also going to be a sophomore. And Jane Sanders actually played quite a bit for Michigan last season. He had 2 starts, appeared in all 13 games, and he had a better freshman season than Dallas Golden statistically. But unlike Dallas Golden, Jane Sanders didn't have to make a position switch. He played outside corner last season, only gave up 127 receiving yards and a touchdown. But out of over 300 snaps that Jane Sanders played for the Michigan defense last year, only 19 were in the slot. So it's not like he's a natural nickel either. And then I think you have a wild card in the 5-star incoming freshman, Kerry Adams. Kerry Adams is built like a boundary corner. He plays like a boundary corner. He is a boundary corner. But Notre Dame already has the best boundary corner in the entire country in Leonard Moore. So Adams is not going to play over Leonard Moore. But he could be good enough to play over at the field corner position as early as his freshman season. Could he compete for that job with Christian Gray and also DJ McKinney and maybe Dallas Golden? Well, I can tell you that Mike Mickens believed that he could compete for playing time immediately. And even though Mike Mickens is gone, I'm sure Aaron Henry is open to the idea of just playing the best players. And if Kerry Adams proves that he's one of the best, then he's going to make his way onto the field. To me, it'd be really surprising if Adams goes out there and he starts at nickel, even though that is technically the clearest path to playing time. I just think it's asking a lot to put a true freshman at that position, which is why Dallas Golden struggled in that spot last year. So I think if Adams is going to get on the field, it's probably going to be at the field corner. And if that happens, then you have a really interesting position battle for nickel because it's going to be between Christian Gray and DJ McKinney for one spot. And both of those guys have played a lot of college football in their time. And if you have 2 experienced guys playing for one spot, that's going to be tough. It should be a really interesting competition if that ends up being the case. But for my prediction here, I don't think that's going to happen. A lot of people think Christian Gray is going to start at nickel. I don't think it's going to be the case. I think it's going to be DJ McKinney, and I think Dallas Golden will rotate in. For as frustrating as it may be for the fans to watch Christian Gray get beat deep every once in a while, the staff is really high on him. Christian Gray is well compensated, and we have seen flashes of greatness from him at the field corner spot. And I think in his 3rd year at that position, and with the fact that USC is not on the schedule, I think he's going to thrive there. And then you've got Leonard Moore across the field from him in the boundary, and I think DJ McKinney, with his experience, he's going to be able to make that transition. He'll do well in that spot, and whenever he needs a breather, Notre Dame is going to be very fine bringing Dallas Golden in. And overall, you just have a stacked group of defensive backs with Moore, Gray, McKinney, Schuler, and Johnson. That's the best secondary in the entire country. All right, coming up, Notre Dame desperately needed help at defensive tackle in the transfer portal, and they got it. But who will cement themselves as the starters in what is now a pretty crowded room? That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Thank you for making Locked On Irish your first watch or listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you have not already, make sure you check out our new Everydayer Club. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Irish. It's the same show, same schedule, just no ads, and it works on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you use. If you listen every day, it's a really easy upgrade. Just go to lockedonirish.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. Number 1 ranked UConn dominated Tennessee 96-66, turning a halftime tie into a historic win and avenging last season's loss by delivering the largest margin in the rivalry's history. AZ Fudd had 27 points and Sarah Strong added 26 as the Huskies remain perfect on the season, reminding everyone why they are the reigning national champions. In the Big Ten, number 2 UCLA rolled past number 8 Iowa 88-65, powered by 22 points from Angela Dukelich and a huge advantage in the paint, staking their claim as a national threat. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
All right, welcome back to Locked On Irish. Today we are breaking down the most important position battles on defense. And next up, we've got defensive tackle. About a month ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, I wasn't sure if Notre Dame had any starting caliber defensive tackles. And now they have several because they went out and they added Francis Brew and Tiona Gray in the transfer portal. And Jason Onye was granted a 6th year of eligibility. So that went from a glaring question mark, weakness, whatever you want to call it, to now potentially a strength depending on how these pieces come together. And as for those pieces, you've got Onye, who is essentially like a bonus portal addition. As I've said on the show, I did not expect him to be granted another year of eligibility, but it was a very welcome surprise for this Notre Dame defense. Onye was playing really well down the stretch last season after his roommate, Gabriel Rubio, went down with an injury, and his experience is critical. His size is very important to this unit. He had 13 stops on the year. As a defensive tackle, it's rare for stats to really blow you away, but Jason Onye is a grown man playing a grown man's position. He's not super effective getting after the passer, but maybe now in an increased role, he'll have a chance to showcase that next season. But then you also have Francis Brew, the transfer from Pittsburgh, who I believe was the most important addition Notre Dame made in the portal, and I think he is the most likely to start out of anyone in that room. Last season with the Panthers, Brew had 20 quarterback pressures coming from the interior. That's even more impressive. He also had 7.5 TFLs and 18 stops. So this dude is a playmaker. He doesn't have the ideal size, but he is freakishly strong. As a matter of fact, he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list because he can squat like 695. I'm not even sure how that's humanly possible. Like, how does the bar not just like bend and break? I'm not sure. I personally am not putting up nearly 700 pounds on squat. Maybe one day. He also benches like 450 pounds. He's a freak, okay? So he's really strong, and he's able to do so much. He's very disruptive, and if you watch that Notre Dame-Pittsburgh game back, which I did when Notre Dame was targeting Francis Brew in the transfer portal, and you just focus on what Brew was doing to Joe Otting in the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line, it was mean, okay? And I'm sure that the Notre Dame coaching staff saw that, and they're like, hold on. We can get Francis Brew. Let's go ahead and get him. And they got him. So he's going to make a big impact on that Notre Dame defense next year, and I think Tiona Gray will as well, the transfer from Oregon. Now, Gray is not quite as proven as Francis Brew is, but he is a big body that would be great against run. And when I say big body, I'm talking 6'6", 336 pounds. He did not play a ton at Oregon. He played over 200 snaps last season, which is pretty good, but he was behind a couple our future NFL guys, and I think he's going to be crucial in short yardage next season because he's just so good at absorbing blocks, and I think he has another level to his game that he just hasn't reached yet because he hasn't been on the field enough. But now that he's going to be in his 3rd season of college football, he's got Charlie Partridge coaching him. I think he could go from being just a run stopper to someone who can maybe get after the passer. And if a quarterback sees a 6'6", 336-pound behemoth running after him, that's going to impact his game. Okay. I think that's fair to say. So I think Gray is very much going to factor into that rotation if he does not win the starting job. And then there's Elijah Hughes, who I think has become a bit underrated. Hughes transferred from USC prior to 2025, and I don't think anyone ever projected him to be a starter. He's more like a valuable rotation piece. But as the season went on, I thought Hughes played better and better. He's very disruptive, has an insanely high motor. He basically is kind of like Donovan Heinish's replacement. I don't think Hughes is quite as good at getting after the quarterback as Heinisch was, because for as much as people complained about Heinisch getting pushed back in the run game, he's very good at getting after the quarterback, and sometimes offensive linemen would have to hold him to prevent that from happening, like we saw on that 4th and goal play against Texas A&M. Sorry to bring up a sore subject, but I don't expect Hughes to be a starter, but he is going to be a guy that sees a lot of action this year, especially now that Heinisch is out the door. Hughes is going to be a senior. He's a true senior next year. He did not redshirt at USC. And you look at that unit, you've got a 6th-year senior in Jason Onye, a junior in Francis Brew, a redshirt sophomore in Tiona Gray, and Elijah Hughes, a senior. So these guys have been around. They played a lot of college football, and I think that position is going to be stout for Notre Dame next season. There's a couple other guys that I just want to mention. I don't expect them to start, but they will absolutely be part of the rotation. Armel Mukam, Cole Mullins, Christopher Burgess Jr., Sean Sevillano. If any one of those guys ends up cracking the top 4, that's a good thing, because that means they really elevated their game to another level during the offseason. If any one of those guys I just mentioned were to do it, I had to make a prediction today. I would say it'd probably be Cole Mullins, just because he has a little bit more experience than Burgess. I think with Sean Sevillano, he was supposed to be that big body that could absorb blocks, but the fact that Notre Dame went out and got Gray, I think Gray is just a better player than Sean Sevillano. So I think the starters are going to be Jason Onye and Francis Brew, and then you're going to see 3 more guys, potentially 4, rotate in with Hughes, Gray, and then Mullins. And then if they have Burgess coming in and playing well too, I think everyone on that Notre Dame staff would welcome that as well. All right, next up, we've got the will linebacker spot. And, I think that the way that they rotate linebackers, like the traditional will linebacker, isn't, as part of the defense anymore. But considering they run a base 4-2-5, there's really only 2 linebackers on the field at one time. Drake Bowen, is going to be the starting Mike linebacker. He's going to have the green dot. He's going to be an exceptional player for this defense next season. He's going to be a captain again as well. So Drake Bowen is going to be a starter. And Kingston Biliamu also would have been a guaranteed starter as well if he had not torn his ACL in that game against Syracuse, which honestly, looking back, that is just so unfortunate that he tore his ACL in that game when you consider just how badly Notre Dame was beating them. Just feel awful for the guy. His second torn ACL of his career. He actually tore one when he was in high school. But once he's back, he's going to be a part of this rotation, but I don't expect him to be back at the start of the season, so it's going to be a battle between Ausberry, Sneed, and also Matt Framo to get snaps at that position. It doesn't entirely matter who starts, because we know Notre Dame is going to continue to rotate their linebackers because they have so many good ones. Even though Max Bulla, the former linebackers coach, is now at Michigan State, I'm sure that Brian Jean-Marie is going to rotate these guys heavily as well. Outside of Drake Bowen, he probably won't rotate quite as much, but I think Ausberry is poised to have a big year. He was 7th on the defense in snaps last season, which is a little bit higher than I anticipated. He had 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He's a very, very smart football player, high football IQ, and he actually had more total tackles, than Kingston Biliamu. Now, obviously, KVA missed that last game of the season, but I think that tells you just how good of a player Jane Ausberry is. He's pretty underrated on this Notre Dame defense, but he's going to have a chance to start at the beginning of the season. And then you've got Jalen Sneed coming back for a 5th year. You know that Sneed is always going to be great getting after the quarterback. He's going to be a 5th year, which is not something I expected. I remember when they were redshirting him during 2022, I thought, what's the point of this? Jalen Sneed is never going to be around for a 5th year. And as recently as last November, I didn't think that Jalen Sneed would be around for a 5th year. But then KVA went down. Sneed's value went up quite a bit after that happened, and now here we are. Don't know if he's going to be like one of the top 2 linebackers out there, but in obvious passing situations, Sneed is going to be out there, and he's going to be wreaking havoc on the opposing quarterback. And then you've got Matt Framo. He's going to be a true sophomore next year. He actually started taking some of Jalen Sneed's snaps at the end of 2025, so I think he could be poised to have a breakout season in 2026. The only problem is Matt Framo is more like a true Mike linebacker, so he's still sitting behind Drake Bowen, but when Notre Dame was playing Navy, Framo got a lot of snaps, and I think that there's going to be a big role for him this season. And then once KVA comes back, I'm predicting October. I know Marcus Freeman said he's going to be back by the start of the season. I think that's a little bit overzealous. Like, sure, he'll be out there, he'll be practicing, but when is he going to be at or near 100%? That's probably not going to be until October or maybe even November. But as long as Notre Dame can get him back and fully healthy or close to full health before that game against Miami, that linebacker room is going to be in a great place. So if I had to pick a starter next to Drake Bowen at the start of the year, I'm going to go with Jane Osbury, but it would not shock me if Madden Framo started taking away some of Osbury's snaps as the year went on. But I think Osbury is set up for a big year, could be his final year with Notre Dame, and that would be a very good 1-2 punch with Bowen and Osbury, and then guys like Snead and Framo rotating in. All right, we've still got one more position battle left, and it's not going to be the one that makes any headlines, but I think it will prove to be crucial for the Irish next season. That's next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want someone who can help. I'd want someone with real experience who can jump right in. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast, without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I pulled up the Gametime app, picked a Lakers game, and had tickets locked in within minutes. I love seeing all the all-in price up front, no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, being able to see the view from the seat before buying made the decision easy, and the zone deal stood out as well. You choose the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. There are great last-minute options as well, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices right before tip-off. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. All right, we are back here on Locked On Irish, breaking down the most important position battles for Notre Dame this season. On yesterday's show, we spent the entire time talking about the position battles on offense. And so far today, all we've done is talk about the defense. But you know what we have not talked about yet? Special teams, and specifically kicker, because there is going to be a competition at kicker, and now they actually have a guy with experience in Spencer Porath, the transfer from Purdue. But it's not just going to be him. They have two other scholarship kickers on the roster. Eric Schmidt, who was on the team last season, had to fill in when Noah Burnett got hurt, and they also just signed Micah Drescher, a freshman. They signed him yesterday on signing day. So now Notre Dame is going to have a three-man competition. I think everyone expects Spencer Porath to be the starter because he's actually proven to be a competent kicker in college football. When Porath was a freshman at Purdue, he had a mediocre season. He went 7-11 on field goals, and he had 3 misses between 30 and 39 yards, which is a little bit weird, right? Like, he was pretty good from 40 plus, but that 30 to 39 range, not very good. But he was much better as a sophomore with the Boilermakers. He went 15 of 17 on field goal attempts on the year, and his only 2 misses, one was from above 40 yards, and the other was from beyond 50. He also made a few in Notre Dame Stadium, so he has experience doing that, something that Eric Schmidt does not, even though he was Notre Dame's kicker for most of last season. And maybe best of all, Spencer Porath was perfect on extra points last season, and he was perfect his freshman year as well. So right now, I'd expect Spencer Porath to be Notre Dame's starting kicker next season. But hey, don't count out Eric Schmidt entirely, because the Notre Dame coaching staff really likes him. They ended up going with him over Noah Burnett. when he was technically healthy enough to go out there, but still dealing with that nagging injury that impacted him all season long. And there was a point in time where I was not sure if Notre Dame was going to be able to get a kicker in the transfer portal. And maybe I shouldn't even say they got Porath in the portal, because according to Odom, the head coach at Purdue, Porath never even entered his name in the portal. He just switched schools. And he said, funny how that works. And I know that some Notre Dame fans were making fun of him, but hey, if that happened to Notre Dame, you'd be pissed off too. So I get it. But hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. Notre Dame had to do what they had to do in order to get a competent kicker. And let's talk about Drescher. He's a little bit of a wild card. He was actually committed to Michigan throughout most of his recruitment. And tell me if you've heard this before. He's the number one kicker in the country in the high school recruiting rankings. What does that mean? I don't know, because Eric Schmidt was also the number one kicker in the country. But in fairness to Schmidt, Notre Dame wanted to redshirt him last season. Marcus Freeman said it, Marty Biaggi said it, but given the injuries, they didn't have a choice. They had to bring him out. And it wasn't that he went 0 for 3 on field goal attempts. He was also pretty bad on kickoffs. It frustrated me sometimes because it felt like he was getting direction to do directional kicking, like he was getting that advice from the coach. I was just like, just boot it, man. You've got a big leg. Just boot it into the end zone. When he did that, it seemed to work. He'd get touchbacks. But then when he tried to aim it a certain way, he'd kick it out of bounds and then give the opponent great field position. So maybe Eric Schmidt will have a chance to redeem himself as the kickoff guy next year. Or maybe that'll be Micah Drescher. Drescher's 6'3", 200 pounds. So that's a big dude for a kicker. But either way, Notre Dame has to figure this out. They cannot go through another season like they have gone through the past 2 years, where there are these huge chunks during the regular season where it wasn't even worth going out there to have a kicker. Now, yes, they got bad luck with Mitch Jeter's injury. They got bad luck with Noah Burnett's injury. I don't know of any injury history for Porath, Schmidt, or Drescher, but man, they need to figure something out there, because Notre Dame is going to go through almost an entire calendar year without making a field goal. Their last one was against NC State in October, and I know I brought that stat up many times on the show already. Guess what? I'm going to continue bringing it up because it's just flat out absurd. I feel better about Porath than I did with Noah Burnett, but still, we're going to have to see it. He's going to have to prove it. Maybe it's in Lambeau. Maybe it's in Notre Dame Stadium in week 2 against Rice, but Notre Dame has to have a competent field goal kicker if they want to win a national championship next season. So there you have it. There are the most important position battles for Notre Dame this offseason. On defense, you've got nickel, defensive tackle, that second linebacker spot until KVA comes back. And, of course, you've got kicker. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. And before you head out, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow along wherever you get your podcasts. Consider this your last call as well to submit mailbag questions. You can drop them in the YouTube comments or hit us up on social media. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Irish ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonirish.supercast.com to join the club, and I'll see you Friday with the mailbag.